time we have special music.
I wanted to just share just a short thing before I sing this song, but obviously we've been thinking about Mr. Cullen. He's always was a big supporter of the church, of everything. And most Sundays, before I finished playing the final song, he'd make his way up. He'd place his hand on my shoulder until I was done, and then he'd have something to share. And most weeks, it was something about that special pastor and that message, and he would say something about God's word was clear, and now it's our job to live it. And he'd always close it with, "Now, Mrs. Pastor."
Mrs. Pastor.
And he'd point to you. You have an important job to take care of that man over there. And he also, I was remembering, it was very important to him that I learned how to properly play. His name is Wonderful. And he would use his hand and he'd say, "Bow down before him." And he even had me practice. He would stand and you could tell I just wasn't getting it quite right. And I tried. And I remember one week I finished, we sang it, and I turned, he says, "Pastor," and I turned back and he has that grin on his face and a little choked up and he said, "She got it." Praise God. Thanks so much to it. But this song that I'm going to sing here, I sang several years ago, and afterwards he came up and he said that he had just that week heard this very song at a funeral of a dear friend, he said, and I don't remember his exact words, but I tucked away the memory that he said the words just were very precious to him, and couldn't believe how he heard it twice in one week.
Yes.
And so I thought the words of one way.
Yes. Very good, thank you. My two daughters are hopefully intending, or they're intending, not hopefully, they are intending, but Lord willing, it will happen, that they would like to go to, and I should let Caitlin pronounce this, Arequipa, I believe, Peru, here this summer. And they haven't obviously been there, so this presentation is somewhat of what they are reading from previous years' trips that they're able to have access to. But they're looking to raise some financial support, but as well certainly prayer support. And my wife, the mother of these two, are, I think, pushing stronger for the prayer support even, as her two little girls get on an airplane and fly to lands unknown. I guess a side story before they come, or as they're coming. Obviously, international travels is not allowed unless you are obviously over 18 or you have somebody over 18 traveling with you. Well, Caitlin turns 18 here shortly, and obviously Rebecca is younger, and so we have, and I'm sorry, I feel sorry for Rebecca because she has not heard the end of it yet, that Caitlin for that 10 days will be her legal guardian and her travel escort. And so poor Rebecca has not heard the end of it, and I'm certain it will not probably ever end. They will be in their 50s still talking about how Caitlin was her legal guardian. But anyway, we want to have them come, and there's a couple of slides that they're going to go over and briefly kind of hopefully give a presentation of what they're going to be doing, and then a short video, and then we'll get to the Word of God.
Our senior while working. I was injured while working several months ago. The pain is getting worse and worse, but I had to do my job. On the way to work this morning, I passed a sign on the road about a medical clinic. Would this free clinic have anyone who could help me with this pain? Can I be healed? Is there a healer?
My son has been sick for days, and seeing him suffer is unbearable. I need help. I saw the church in town hosting a free clinic this week. Would they be able to figure out what's wrong? Would their medicine work? I have to try. Is there a healer?
My eyesight has been getting so much worse lately. It's getting harder to drive. If I lose my job as a taxi driver, I don't know how can I support my family. I saw that a church nearby is having a free optical clinic this week. I wonder if they have some new glasses that will work for me and help me keep my job. I wonder, is there a healer?
Hurting people have always flocked to Jesus. They came in droves to see him, to beg for healing, praying for a miracle. And when they went on their way, bodies mended and souls transformed, their lips sang with praise, "There is a healer." This is the beautiful ministry of Medical Missions Outreach. We partner with local pastors and missionaries in developing nations all over the world to minister to people who do not have access to quality health care. Pain and suffering bring thousands to a place where we have a chance to show them love by offering compassionate care. Then, a volunteer from that local church will share the message of the gospel with each patient, providing the spiritual care that he needs most desperately.
Hello, this is Missionary Pastor Jerry Wyatt here in Morogoro, Tanzania. As we seek to reach our community for the cause of Christ, we've been able to partner with Medical Missions Outreach, and they've been a tremendous blessing and a tool to draw people to Christ. They're able to come to our church and see their physical needs met, but more importantly, reaching them with the gospel. And we've seen many, many hundreds of people trust Christ through these outreaches. Many that have been baptized, that have joined the church. I think of one gentleman in particular that trusted Christ the very first outreach and has helped out every single one since. We want to thank Medical Missions Outreach for the tremendous blessing they've been to us. Our church people love being able to invite family and friends using this tool of medical missions to reach them for the cause of Christ.
Last year alone, over 20,000 patients in 9 countries received physical care from our teams of volunteers. Consultations, physicals, eye exams, dental work, even surgical procedures were all done completely free of charge for the people who came to our clinics. After receiving the care they needed, each patient then heard the beautiful message of the gospel in their heart language from a member of the host church. 5,275 of these made a decision to trust the great physician with their spiritual healing as well, receiving him as their personal savior.
Partnering with Medical Missions Outreach enables us to not only show the love of Jesus, but to also share the love of Jesus as we come alongside hurting people who are in desperate need of not only physical attention, but spiritual attention. We partner along with our numerous churches from the jungle. Our leaders come down here and spend the whole entire week doing evangelism, talking to every single individual that passes through these gates. This week alone, over the last 3 days of running the brigade, we've seen over 2,000 people. It's been able to connect us with our community. We've seen numerous leaders from our state government to our council government come through the doors here, being able to greet them, introduce yourself as a ministry that cares and wants to show love to people and connecting them with the church. And Medical Missions Outreach makes it possible for us to be able to make an incredible impact on our community that we would have otherwise never been able to access.
We need you to lock arms with us, whether it be volunteering on a trip, collecting eyeglasses, funding a special project, or praying for us faithfully. We need you. All over the world, there is great pain and suffering. People are desperate for help, desperate for hope. But we have a message to share. There is a healer. He loves you. He died for you. He sent me here to care for you. Let me tell you about him. To learn more and find out how you can get involved, go to medical-outreach.com. Medical Missions Outreach, pointing others to the great physician.
Operation Renewed Hope, which is loosely affiliated with Maranatha. In fact, that's, I believe, how she heard about them the first time. And Matt has gone on one mission trip with them as well, to Africa. And so she's been kind of working her way towards going on a trip with them. I believe they're out of North Carolina. And I think they canceled all their trips for this year, which was a disappointment to her. And so I was talking to, I've already mentioned the Mumfords, and Dave Mumford, since he has a lot of contacts in missions, as that's part of his ministry right now. And he recommended this group, which is loosely affiliated with Bob Jones. And so we made that connection. Obviously, I know the guy that runs Operation Renewed Hope, but I don't know anything about this organization at all, other than Dave Mumford's recommendation. And obviously working with that host church there in Arequipa, Peru, was it the Gardners? Dave Gardner, Pastor Dave Gardner, who I don't know as well, but a good friend of mine who was actually my wife probably will say sadly, was the best man at our wedding. The guy was a missionary kid, grew up in Peru, and is now back serving in Peru as a missionary himself, but he was quite the... just to give you a glimpse of his name is Andy Pace. His favorite character was Ernest. Ernest, like, goes to camp, Ernest, whatever, and so that kind of gives you the caliber. And for what odd reason, I picked him as our best man, which turned out to haunt us during our wedding. But anyway, I contacted Andy and asked him if he knew anything about this organization or of the Gardners, and I know this means nothing to any of you except for me, but he has known this host pastor, David Gardner, since before he could walk. and just highly recommended the trip, and said that they will be blessed beyond measure and challenged beyond measure as well. And so I guess between David Mumford and Andy Pace, where we have the recommendations, and they're well on their way. They worked on getting some shots organized and vaccines and all of that wonderful passports and all the things that are requirement, and the legal paperwork to make Caitlin her guardian. So poor Rebecca. But they're looking forward to this, and certainly we ask that you certainly pray for them. Neither of them have ever been on an airplane, so this will be their nothing like starting out small. Your first trip, let's fly to the other hemisphere. In the mountains, no less. Flying over there in the Andes Mountains area is one of the worst, from what I'm told, one of the worst areas for pilots. You have to be a special kind of caliber of pilot to make it in that area, and that's where they're going to be their first trip. So prayer would be good. Prayer would be good. But then as well, I don't know if it's said on the screen, but was it $2,100? Almost $2,200 each that they have to raise, and that includes their flights and then the food and lodging and all of those things. There's a potential that they'll be spending that week there in Peru in a dorm. The church, the hosting church, has a kind of a seminary, and it sounds like they will be using that for perhaps lodging while they're there, and looking forward to what the Lord will do. I can honestly say that my trip to both Mexico and Peru in their age range ultimately changed life and ministry. I can say that honestly, and so looking forward to what the Lord will do with them in this as well. And for those that don't know, Caitlin obviously is going to be going to Maranatha in the fall for nursing, and so this is right up her alley for that. And then Rebecca is going to Maranatha in the fall for medical missions, which obviously that's exactly right up that same alley, and a minor in criminal justice. I don't know what that means, if she shoots them and then helps fix them. I don't know how this all works out together. Seems to be somewhat a paradox of sorts, but the Lord will lead as He sees fit, and we're thankful for that. I think she has letters for most of you, and give you a little more detail if you haven't received that. You can hound them for that as well. And is there anything else that I need to say? Anything else that I need to say about your guys' trip? Now we're going to go to Acts chapter 16 here, and kind of a follow-up to the mission trip, follow-up to that very thought. Acts chapter 16. Nope, getting ahead of myself there. Ministry is a task for every child of God. It's not ministry or ministering is something that is not just for pastors and missionaries and evangelists, Christian school teachers, and so on and so forth. It's for every child of God has a specific ministry that God has called them to. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 1 says, I therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you that you walk worthy of that vocation wherewith ye are called. And that word vocation is a Greek word, klesis, which means it's a calling, it's an invitation. It's not our occupation necessarily. It's probably not what's going to pay the bills. It's probably not going to be something that we'll retire from, honestly, ever, until our last breath. It is more than likely not something that we will probably put on a resume of any kind. But for every child of God, there has been a vocation, to use the same King James word there, a vocation that God has called us to in His service. And it's a joy to be able to find and pursue that task that God has for us. So we want to look at kind of that calling here this morning as we just finish out and follow up to a missions presentation. Well, before you, let's begin with the word of prayer. Dear Lord, we thank you again for your word. I thank you for the time that we have left. I pray that you would challenge our hearts, allow me to decrease so that you alone would increase here this morning. I do pray that just the challenge would be clear to each one of us, myself included, that we'd be able to live out what you have for us in our hearts, in our lives, in our ministry, in our service towards others. And I just ask that you would use us many times beyond our means beyond what we even imagine in our own minds. But as we yield ourselves to you, we thank you for what you will do. And I pray that you just be with our time now as we look to your word. In Jesus' name, amen. Ministry could be something as simple as this. As an illustration, an elderly woman forced to start slowing down because of her health. Still had a great desire to serve the Lord, and so she prayed about this for quite some time. What she hoped to be able to continue doing, she was no longer able to do. And Lord, what do you have for me now? I'm in a whole new phase of my life, and this an adjustment in and of itself, but I still want to serve. What can I do? Well, this lady, this elderly lady, was a pianist. And the Lord laid on her heart that she could perhaps be an encouragement to others through her piano playing. So she placed an ad in the newspaper that just read simply this: pianists will play hymns by phone daily for those who are sick and despondent. The service is free. And then it just was the phone number. And surprisingly, I say that, surprisingly people began to call nearly nonstop. And it is said that within about the first month or two, she had already played for several hundred people and encouraged them in their walk with their Lord just from her home with a telephone and a piano. You know, ministry could be something as simple as that, but yet as grand as that, and at the same time frame. But we also realize that in ministry sometimes things don't always go as we hope. As the second illustration goes, a catering company was serving two conventions at the same time at the same hotel. A group of ministers and a group of salesmen were having separate meetings and had hired the same caterer. At one point, the head chef realized to his horror that the spiked watermelon that was intended for the salesmen was unfortunately delivered to the clergy members. He quickly commissioned for some assistants to rapidly gather up that watermelon and bring it to the right room for their lunch. A few minutes later, those assistants returned back and with a horrified face said, "It's too late, they've already served themselves." So the head chef was rather embarrassed. He's like, "Well, do they seem to be complaining about it? What's going to happen?" And one of the assistants replied and said, "We didn't hear any complaints, but we did see a number of pastors saving the watermelon seeds." Sometimes our best efforts in serving, in ministering, sometimes at times has that backfire effect. And our best efforts in our own strength seem to fail. But it's amazing what God can do. And it's amazing what the Lord does even in and through us. We could almost say it this way, despite us. And in Acts chapter 16, we have a familiar, in fact, I've referred to this many times, but I don't know that we've ever specifically looked at it specifically, but we have a familiar incident with Paul in regards to his service, and literally in regards to his direction. Kind of a little geography, and this isn't completely up to scale. I'll put the map up there while I read these verses. Here in Acts chapter 1, it says, "And then he came to Derbe in Lystra." If you see up here, there's there, and I think Derbe, if the screen went farther, I think it's right here. "And behold, a certain disciple was there, named Timotheus, the son of a certain woman, which was a Jewish, and believed, but his father was Greek, which was well reported of by the brethren that were at Lystra and Iconium. Him would Paul have to go forth with him, and took and circumcised him because of the Jews which were in those quarters, for they knew all that his father was a Greek. And as they went through the cities, they delivered them the decrees for to keep. They were ordained of the apostles and elders which were at Jerusalem. And so were the churches established in the faith and increased in number daily." Verse 6, "Now when they had gone through," I think the proper way, I would say this from the English, looks like Phrygia or something, but the Greek has it as Phrygia. So however you want to read that, if I can find, where did that go? I don't know that has it on their map, but that was a little bit past in this area. And the region of Galatia, which you can see there as well, of the Holy Ghost to preach the word in Asia. After they were come to Mysia, they essayed to go into, and again in the English, I would think this would be pronounced Bithynia, but it actually is Bithonia. There's that here. "The seers suffered them not, and they passing by Mysia came down to Troas," which is way over there. "And a vision appeared to Paul in night, there stood a man of Macedonia and prayed him, saying, Come over unto Macedonia and help us. And after he had seen the vision, immediately we endeavored to go into Macedonia, assuredly gathering that the Lord had called us for to preach the gospel unto them. Now, if you can kind of gather the thinking here, Paul first, as it says, he's gone through part of that Galatia, which, again, you can just barely see it on the screen. You have the G-A, kind of almost half the L, but here's Galatia in this kind of purple lavender color. They wanted to go into Asia, which I know it says here on the map, Asia here, but really this whole area and beyond is the region of Asia. We think of Asia more of the Orient type of thing, but in this time frame, in the Roman Empire time frame, Asia certainly was not as large as we know it to be as of today. But it would seem that perhaps his desire was perhaps to go more into this area where it literally says Asia. But the Holy Ghost, it says in verse 6, seems to have stopped him. So then he wanted to go into Mysia, and it seemed to be stopped there. He thought of going up into this area, which, they start making their way, and he stopped there. And he winds up going to Troas. And what I find somewhat amazing in all of this is how he wound up in Macedonia from, all the way back to Lystra and Iconium. How he wound up where he was going from where he was, and the steps that the Lord took him to get there. And I think there's a lot of significance, truthfully, there's a lot of significance that we should not be applying, but there's also some significance that we need to be applying. I only have 2 points, and hopefully it won't take too long here this morning. But what this call, if you want to call it a call, what this vocation, what this following the Lord's leading does not mean. And I know I probably have been on this soapbox too many times, but I'm going to jump on it one more time. There's often a phrase, when God closes the door, look for the window. And certainly, while there is great urgency in the service of our God, eternity is at stake. There's great urgency in our service to our God. But when God closes the door, I don't believe that the Bible encourages us to then look for a window. Let me kind of back up. I've been on the fire department now for 26 years, I guess. That's how that works out. 26 years I've been on a fire department, slowly getting out of the fire department, I guess you could say it that way. Not going on as many calls as I once did, we'll say it that way. But when there's a fire and you're in a burning building, the building is on fire and the door is blocked, what's the greatest way to get out of the building? A window. Don't stay in a building simply because the door is blocked. There's windows, and find a window. With the fire department, obviously, we have the tools. We make our own window if we have to, or make our own door if we have to, and we will find a way to get out of that building. And in an urgent situation like that, and the place is on fire, you find whatever means you can to get out of that situation. Now, sadly, a lot of times in our service to our God, and again, there's great urgency involved with this, we take this, when God closes a door, look for a window scenario to the same way. Now, in a fire, why do we look for a window? Because, the options of either burning alive or jumping through a window, there's obviously, it's not a hard decision to be made. Ultimately, what I want is survival. Ultimately, what we want as human beings is survival. And I think God created us with the adrenaline and all of those means by which to encourage, can you use that word? Encourage survival. But in His service, we have to be very cautious that we aren't searching for windows solely to get what we want. That I'm not just searching after, this is my desire, this is my will, and God's closed the door, so there's got to be another way that I can get what I want. And we've got to be cautious with, when God closes the door, don't be looking for a window. When God closes the door, He undoubtedly is going to be opening another door, as He did with Paul here. Paul's not climbing his way out a window to get to Macedonia. He's marching right through a very wide open door, and honestly, it could not have been any clearer. Hey, we need you over here. And so when God closes the door, don't look for a window. That's not the application here. God's will is truly following God's will and not redefining my will as His will. And I think that's at times a challenge. I already mentioned for Kate, she's had a dream of a mission trip to Africa, well, for years, probably all of her high school years. She has desired to go on a mission trip to Africa. Obviously, I've never been to Africa. It's just been her heart's desire. And this is her first year that she would be old enough to obviously go on a trip on her own. And it was the first year that Africa could have worked. But God seemed to have closed that door. And I'm thankful that Caitlin, and honestly, it surprised me, but it at the same time delighted me, that she wasn't so upset that she was trying to figure out how to get a window open. I need to go to Africa. I'm going to go to Africa. I've got to go to Africa. But she was humble enough and willing enough to say, well, where does God want me to go then this summer? I want to go on a mission trip. Kind of want to get my feet wet in missions and service and nursing. And where does the Lord have for me? And honestly, obviously, for somebody that's been to Peru, I think that's cool that the two will be going back to Peru as well. It's been, 27 years, so Peru should have recovered from my visit, and now we'll send two newt horns back and see how that works there in that nation. But when God closed the door, following God's calling does not mean I've got to find a window to break through and get to what I want. Following after God's will often means that there are going to be times when the door is closed. And that door is closed. But it also means that the Lord is still leading us. If he closed the door, it's because he desires us to go somewhere else. And I think there's times that's hard to live out. Because my will is easily defined as God's will. We take the verse of my heart's desire becoming reality, and we desire that. This is what I hope for. This is what I want. This is what I think would be best for me. God seems to have closed that door. Well, I still got to figure out how to get what I think God's will is. But really, it's just what my will is. And we've got to be cautious with that. Secondly, kind of an application for verse 9. It says, "And a vision appeared to Paul in the night." Not only is it not mean that we are going to be looking for a window, but it also does not mean that we should be waiting for visions. If you consider for a moment that we are not, as I have there on the screen, we're not apostles. What a phenomenal time frame that they lived in as apostles. What a phenomenal time frame that how God used them to get the foundation of the church laid, obviously upon Christ, but worldwide, geographically speaking, how that church foundation was laid by 11, then 12 men, basically in the known world at that time frame. The abilities that the Lord gave them to have at that time frame to do that, to be able to speak in tongues so that it's not some sort of heavenly gibberish, but they're able to speak in languages that they didn't know. Again, going back to this trip and just picking on Kate again, but because she's had a desire to go to Africa, and a lot of Africa is French speaking, she's been focused on her French. So she's been working on learning French. And was it just 3 weeks ago, that door closed, and we're on to Peru, and now she's to Spanish, which she's already taken high school Spanish, but now we're unlearning French to get back to Spanish. Wouldn't it be amazing if today we still had the means that we could go to any country and speak the language that was their native language and be able to speak the gospel in that moment without having to go to, well, let's just even step into Paul's time frame. If you look at modern day missions where many times they take a year for language studies, could you imagine if Paul had to take a year? Now I know that this was Roman Empire and a lot of it was Greek speaking, but could you imagine in that day being able to speak immediately a language that you didn't know? I took 2 years of Greek. It's still Greek to me. It's still a language that, and I know that biblical Greek is more or less a dead language today. It's not spoken anywhere, but it's still not my forte by any means. And what a blessing that they had. The signs, the gifts, the abilities, the visions that they had are things that God used in that moment to help spread the gospel quickly and rapidly, so that the church could begin almost instantaneously. I was challenged by this thought, and it wasn't my intent to share it, but let me tell you what humbled me as I was thinking about this. If the spread of the gospel were left to just 12 random people today, well, there's more than 12 of us here this morning. What if out of us, 12 of us, the spread of the gospel from the mouth of Christ to the church as we know it today fell on the shoulders of just 12 random people today? How far would the gospel get if it were just up to me and 11 other people? What a necessity that they had to not only understand the urgency, but as well to understand that God has given them the means to do what no other generation had the means to do, and what a privilege that was. So don't be waiting for visions, because we're not apostles, but as well as 2 Peter chapter 1 verse 3 says, according as his divine power hath given unto us all things that pertain unto life and godliness, through the knowledge of him that hath called us unto glory and virtue. Peter makes it clear that as we complete the word of God, we have all that we need for our life and godliness. We don't need a vision. God's already given us all that we need to know, and I'm thankful for that. We live in a time frame when, with this in our hands, we have all that God needs us to know. Now, I can tell you, time and time again, there are times that I look into this Word of God, and I see something that I hadn't noticed before. I go to a verse that perhaps I memorized in Awana as a second grader, and a verse that has been very familiar to me, and I look at it in the context and say, wow. I never really understood the depths of that verse that I've known for most of my life, but this is amazing. There are times that indeed the Holy Spirit just shows us through His Word of the depths that we've not seen before. But we don't have any means or need today to have visions. But you know, there's a lot of times that we wait, we stop and wait, because we're not sure what God's will is for our life. And it's as if we are waiting for writing on the wall. It's as if we're waiting for a vision in our night. It's as if, Lord, I don't know what to do, so I'm not going to do anything, and you're just going to have to show me. And it's almost as if we are waiting for that vision to appear before us. We have what we need. We just need to be obedient to what God has called us to. I had reference there of Revelation. Obviously, the end of Revelation concludes with the fact that nothing more is to be added, and nothing is to be taken away from what we have in His Word, and what a reminder that is as well. Therefore, any visions today are either a fancy way of describing the Holy Spirit's direction through the Word of God, or it is more than likely the results of too much pizza the night before, perhaps. And we have to be cautious when we're following the Lord's will, seeking His will, that we're not in a stopped position until we get the vision of what God has for us. But thirdly, what this is not, what pursuing God's will, pursuing His calling, walking worthy of the vocation wherewith we have been called, as Paul says to the church there in Ephesus, it thirdly does not mean that we need to find our peace. I've heard this many times. I just need to have, and the word is, peace about this. As if here's the task that God has called me to, but I'm not going to do this until I have, again we use the word, a peace about it. Now I don't deny the fact that the Word of God speaks much about peace. We can't overlook that. I don't deny the fact that the Lord desires us to have peace in what we are doing. But I do think that there's a lot of times that we put the cart before the horse in this regard. And again, because the girls took up so many, I think we only get 20 slides online, so we about maxed out here today with their presentation. But I meant, if I had more room, I would have put the verses up on the screen. But let me read Philippians chapter 4, verses 6 and 7. It says, be careful for nothing, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God, and the peace of God, which passes all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. Very next verse, we know, Philippians 4:8. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true. We have this whole list of things that we are to be thinking about. Think on these things. Verse 9, then continues, those things which ye have both learned and received and heard and seen in me, do. And the God of peace shall be with you. What's the order of our peace here? We wait for peace before we do, or do we do so that we will have peace? And a lot of times I think when we're trying to find out what God has for our lives, we are trying to find peace before we do. But we've got to do so that we might have peace. And it's a great, phenomenal result of actually following the Lord in obedience and having a peace about it. That's an amazing reality of life, and it truly is a peace of God which passes all understanding. But that peace does not happen from standing still. That peace happens from doing. And then God gives us peace as we go. Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 through 30 says, "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Again, who does the rest go to? Those who are laboring, those who are weary, those who are in need of that rest. "Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find again rest on your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light." When do we realize that his yoke is easy and his burden is light? When is it that we get the reality of peace? Again, it's not, I don't know what the Lord has for me, so I'm not going to really move anywhere until he gives me a peace about moving forward. No, we need to look at what God has called us to do and move forward and enjoy the peace that passes all understanding as we are doing, as we are laboring. And it is then that we realize, oh wait, this yoke is pretty easy. This weight is pretty light. There's great peace. There's great joy. There's great excitement about this. So don't look at this call, this vocation, as something that is, well, God closed that door, so I got to find a window to get through to get what I want. No, don't redefine your will as God's will. That's not how this works. It is not well, I just got to wait for a vision. God gave us what we need. He's given to us all that we need for our life and our godliness today in his word. And as well, don't be in the pursuit of peace in the absence of action. Follow in obedience, and you will find peace. Stopping in disobedience, you'll never see peace. You'll never understand it. The peace that passes all understanding is not for those who are living in disobedience. It's for those who are living in obedience to what God has called us to do. So that's what it means. Doesn't mean. Here's what it does mean. First 4 verses I already read. He came to Derbe, Lystra. I'm not trying to put in more humanity into Paul than what's recorded for us. So give me a little liberty here and let me describe it this way. If I were Paul. If I were Paul, imagine I am making my second missionary journey, and I come into this city and I find somebody that is well spoken of, a man named, well, we know him now as Timothy. And so we find Timothy, and he is obviously wanting to be somewhat of a protege. He wants to tag along. He wants to learn the ropes. He wants to be a part of the work and ministry that God has called me to. And here's somebody that wants to come alongside of me. Again, I'm stepping in the shoes of Paul and show you my humanity, not his. This is not Paul, this is me. And so I'm stepping into Paul's shoe. I've arrived in this city. I found Timothy. Timothy wants to join me. And I want to show Timothy what it's like to serve the Lord. So we continue on in verse 3. Him and Paul had to go forth with him and took and circumcised him. Obviously, we have some issues as Paul is reaching the Jews first, and this guy has a father who is Greek, and so there's a lot of sacrifice going on here in verse 3. Verse 4, and as they went through the cities, they delivered them the decrees for to keep. And this first part, until we get to verse 6, the first part of the second missionary journey, Paul is just revisiting cities that he had gone to in his first missionary journey. And he's taking Timothy right along with him. And can you imagine, again, this is not Paul's humanity, this is mine. Before coming here to Toulon, we were in West Bend. And that's as far as my ministry circle goes, besides churches that we just served in as a layperson, which I guess we could include those as well. So someone comes alongside us here in Toulon and says, you know what, that's right, you're getting really old. I'll be learning the ropes, and because you're getting old. And my daughter will probably be back there saying, exactly, he's getting old, and he needs somebody to replace him. And so this guy comes and joins alongside of me, and he wants to learn ministry. So we serve here briefly, and then I take him back to West Bend, Wisconsin, where we came from before coming here, and where I was an assistant pastor, and still know quite a few people there. And can you imagine, as we arrive in West Bend, the people know me. And so here, we'll call him Timothy. Timothy right alongside of me is like, man, this guy knows everybody. This is amazing. And so then we go from West Bend, we go over to Horicon, which is where we were before that time. And while I was in college and finishing up college and newly married, and still know the pastor very well, and several of the church members there. And so we go from West Bend. It's only about an hour drive. We go over to Horicon, and Timothy's right alongside of me, and things are, again, they know me, they love me, they're excited to see me. It's been a while, Paul, Art, whatever. Again, humanity of Paul in my life. And then we go from Horicon, we go continuing heading west through Wisconsin. We go back over to Sun Prairie where we were married, and both of us served during our college years at Maranatha. And so there we are in Sun Prairie. I don't know that I know a single person still in Sun Prairie, but let's pretend that we still do. That's getting close to 30 years now. And so I bring young Timothy with Sun Prairie, and again, they're like, hey, Art, and just kind of follow with me the humanity here. It's kind of just one of those, hey, these people know me. I've served with them. I led them to the Lord. This is Paul's testimony. And I've had an impact on their hearts and on their lives, and this is kind of fun to bring a protege with me, and he's kind of learning ministry, and he's learning what it is to be in the Lord's work. And then Paul says to Timothy, hey, let's go to pass uncharted before. Let's go find a new place. Timothy, let's go this direction. And we don't know what happens, but we do know that the Lord says no. We don't have recorded for us what went through the heart and mind of Paul. We don't have recorded for us what went through the heart and mind of Timothy. But I can tell you what would go through the heart and mind of myself. After I revisited these churches with this new guy, and we start to go some direction that I think is going to be the plan, and the Lord says no. Oh, didn't see that one coming. Been kind of on a streak here of good things, and encouraging them, and reminding them of what God is doing, and broadening the horizons beyond their city and what God is doing in so many other cities, and here we have this, want to broaden it farther, and the Lord said no. What happened after verse 6? What was the conversation that Paul had with Timothy? And then as we continue on, as Paul says, all right, well, let's go try this direction. And again, the Lord says, no. Again, we don't have the humanity recorded for us. We don't have the thought process that's going on. We don't know what went through the heart and life of Paul in this moment, nor how Timothy responded as well. But I've got to think there had to have been great humility involved when Paul is bringing alongside a young Timothy to show him ministry, and the Lord keeps shutting door after door. What now, Lord? I want to show this man some work. I want to show him some ministry. I want to show him what it's like to go into a city for the first time, and to find that first person and lead that first person to the Lord, and then turn that into a second person and a third person. I want to show him what it's like to help get the foundation of a church started in this location. I want to show him what it's like then to move on and go back and visit them again. I want him to be a part of this. Lord, why are you closing these doors? No, following after our God requires, ultimately demands great humility. And I wish there was a way to get around that, but there is no other way. There is no other means. It just requires great humility. Have you ever thought you were doing something right? Even as an adult. But let's go back to our childhood. Do you ever remember having friends over as a child? And more than likely what happened when you had friends over, some perhaps more than others, is you wound up getting yourself into trouble. And before long, when you think you're with the friends and you're just having a good time, then suddenly you hear the voice of mom or dad reminding you that what you're doing you should not have been doing. And you know that whole embarrassment that accompanies that. You know that doesn't change when you're an adult. Have you ever, and in fact, if you disagree with me, if you doubt me, how about after the service, we will arrange to have a police officer sitting next to the bank here in town, and we will all go sit out in front of that bank, and you go past driving really fast. And we will all watch you get pulled over. And you can report to us what it feels like in a humbling way to be reminded. I won't mention of going past somebody being pulled over and going past and seeing it was my parents many years ago. But I got to imagine that was embarrassing. I'll let them share that story. We know there's great humility as we follow after our God, and there's no other routes. Secondly, as we continue on to verses 6 through 8, there is great endurance. Again, if we could go back to that map, the quickest and most direct route. In fact, I guess we could go back. It's not that long ago. Here we go. From where they are here to where they wind up in trust. So this is where they want to go. This is where God has ultimately for them to go so they can get into Macedonia. The quickest route would have been obviously straight through, which is what Paul was going to in the first place. Recall? He wanted to go this way, and the Lord says no. So he wants to go this way, and the Lord says no. But Paul keeps on moving, and I love how he just literally follows the border between the two. As a side note, if he would have kept going, if he would have been able to go this way, AJ last year was in Istanbul, which was then Constantinople, is literally right there. Right along that, what do you call that? That waterway, whatever divides that, a strait, whatever that is. Anyway, so that's how close Paul was to where AJ spent a year of his life in the Marine Corps. But God says, no, don't go that way. Not yet, anyway. And so he goes all the way over here, which ultimately could have been the end destination had he gone the way that he wanted to in the first place, or thought he was supposed to. But what I see in that picture is tremendous, if we can get back here, endurance. Tremendous endurance as he continues on, continuing on. It isn't a, Lord, close that door, I don't know what to do now, so I'm just going to sit and park. Timothy, I guess you can just go home now. It wasn't, well, let's continue on, Timothy, but now that we've had the second door closed, I'm at a loss for words. I just don't even know what to do. Let's just call it, we're done. There was great endurance. Paul, as is recorded for Luke as the kind of the hand reporter of Paul's memoir here, we could call it this, on the second missionary journey, makes it very clear that they continuing on. And it takes great endurance to follow our Lord. But then, lastly, very quickly, verse 10. And after he had seen the vision, immediately we endeavored to go into Macedonia, assuredly gathering that the Lord had called us for to preach the gospel unto them. There's just one final thought in regards to what the call of God does mean. Not only is it humility, not only is it endurance, but it requires a response. And I love how verse 10 says, immediately. And the basis of that immediately was these two words, assuredly gathering. There was no doubt in their mind. The Lord had called them. This is what we had to do. We're not waiting any longer. We've got to go. And if we could jump down to verse 13, it says, and on a Sabbath day we went out of the city by a riverside where prayer was wont to be made, and we sat down and spake unto the women which resorted thither. Now, we know the rest of the story. We know how this is all going to work out. We know, honestly, it's not going to work out so well for Paul even in Macedonia, as far as humanly speaking. But can you imagine, again, seeing the humility, endurance, and the response? Paul says, let's go this way. No, let's go this way. No. God says, let's go this way. They get to where they go. They go to the chief city of Macedonia. Because the vision that he had was just come over to Macedonia. He goes to the chief city of Macedonia. He goes out to, a lot of times the early Christians would meet outside of the city. And so he goes out there. He hears that there's a spot where it's usually designated for a time, place of prayer. So he goes out there to see if anybody is there, and all he finds, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but all he finds is some ladies. Now, can you imagine as Paul has gone and immediately responded, and he's traveled, and it's assumed that this could have easily taken several weeks, if not up to a month, to get from where he was to where he now is. And so this has been a lot of endurance as Paul has continued on traveling for potentially up to a month. He finally arrives in this place, the destination of this vision. He's in the chief city of it. He gets out there, and there's only a few ladies. Sometimes it's amazing how the Lord uses that which seems so insignificant to us, that which seems so, at times could even be discouraging for us. It's amazing how sometimes the Lord calls us not to tasks of grandeur, but tasks of just right here, right now, with these three people. And that's exactly where God has meant for us to be. what the call does not mean, but what the call does mean. As we walk worthy of the vocation that God has called us to walk, are we doing it with humility? Are we doing it with an endurance? And are we doing it with a response, a rapid response? Lord, I want to do it, and we're going to go now. I want to serve you. I want to have that peace, but I'm not waiting for peace. I'm doing so that I might have peace. And I want to follow after you so that I might be able to hear one day, well done, thou good and faithful servant. As Paul was able to say that he ran the race. He finished his course. He fought his fight. And what a joy it was to be able to have laid up for him. I know I'm getting ahead of myself for tomorrow, but if you want a modern day example, I think Mr. Cole is a perfect modern day example. The guy who lived it, who raced it, who fought it. And with great joy, although we have sorrow saying goodbye, but with great joy, he's enjoying the benefits of a race well run. May we do the same. Let's pray. Beloved, we thank you again for your word. I thank you for the example here with Paul. And although kind of a quick review of probably a familiar passage, I pray that you'd remind us of the importance, the significance of accomplishing your work for each one of us. And I pray that we'd be humble enough, that we'd be honest enough, that we'd have endurance, that we'd have desire to respond for you. And honestly, as we consider the many, even in these last couple of years, from even this little church who have gone before us, who in past decades have been quite the warriors for you, even here in this church, I pray that you would remind us who still remain of an important task that lies before us. An important task that we can't just wait for someone else, for we are now that someone else. And I pray that you would use us, give us that boldness, each one of us, to strive after the vocation that you've called us to. And I pray that you be with my daughters as well as they strive to go on this trip. And I just pray that you direct their steps and provide for them as you see fit as well. And we thank you for what you will do there. In Jesus' name, amen. We normally, especially for the Cole family that's normally not here, we normally, after we shut off the cameras, we sing because our governor